And I call the conference to order for the last session of the interventions, and to commence the Deputy Minister for Sport and Recreation of the Republic of South Africa, Hart Oosthuizen.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, for this opportunity. Let me just say that having had the opportunity to listen to all the previous interventions, we are convinced that the 2015 revised code we are discussing will go a long way in ensuring that anti-doping efforts are enhanced, are enforced and entrenched. There should be no doubt that doping remains enemy number one, both in terms of the integrity of sport and the health and well-being of our athletes, and yes, also on issues of public health. We rise to support the adoption of this revised code and the related international standards, as we are of the conviction that this document ensures that, firstly, WADA remains central in the fight against doping in sport. Secondly, that anti-doping efforts remain coordinated. Thirdly, that regions such as Africa, where resources remain scarce, can meaningfully contribute to fight the scourge. And fourthly, that those that think they can beat the system through unscrupulous means, such as doping, have less and less space to hide. Now, Chairperson, while many countries, especially those in the developing world, continue to find it difficult to commit substantial resources towards fighting doping, efforts to facilitate their involvement is well documented. WADA's RADO efforts, the UNESCO Voluntary Fund, and the goodwill that is evident amongst countries and institutions to collaborate and partner on anti-doping programs all contribute to ensuring that our fight remains universal. We are happy that the revised code affords RADOs recognition in terms of their role. And we hope that at the next UNESCO Conference of Parties, there will be some discussion as to the role afforded to RADOs there. In conclusion, Chairperson, to our view, sport remains a catalyst for positive development. Sport should be used to address issues such as peace, where conflict exists, must bring harmony, where discord reigns, and afford our kids a platform to do healthy and good things. It must build the character of our children with a view to ultimately empower them to represent our countries on the international stage. In fact, it should not become a dumping ground for social misfits and for cheaters. So my call is, let's support WADA. Let us put, if there are some petty issues aside, to protect sport as a commodity to achieve so many other noble and positive things that we know do exist in sport. I thank you.
Thank you, Hart. Now, on behalf of the newly appointed Minister for Sport in Australia and also WADA Executive Member for Oceania, the Honourable Peter Dutton, I give the call to Andrew Godkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I speak today on behalf of the Australian Minister for Sport, the Honourable Peter Dutton, and to provide the Australian Government's support for the proposed revisions to the World Anti-Doping Code and the international standards. Since its establishment, the Code has facilitated a coordinated and cooperative approach between governments and the international sporting movement to implement a viable and effective international anti-doping framework. This is a significant achievement and reflects the relevance and effectiveness of the Code. It's important, however, the Code keeps pace with the latest anti-doping trends and has the tools to meet future challenges. The overall anti-doping effort needs to remain rigorous and credible among stakeholders. Our athletes and the general public must have confidence in the integrity of sport and know that athletes who cheat will be identified and sanctioned. I highlight the Australian Government's support for the proposed increase in sanctions for the more serious doping violations. The penalties for violations need to be strong enough to act as an effective deterrent against doping. A 4-year penalty means that an athlete in an Olympic sport is likely to miss the next Olympics, and an athlete in a non-Olympic sport loses a significant amount of time participating in that chosen sport. The Australian Government also supports the amendments that give greater prominence to the role of intelligence gathering and investigations in detecting breaches of the anti-doping rules. With doping practices becoming more sophisticated, it is less likely that violations will be detected through analytical testing means alone. Although testing is a valuable and fundamental means of policing doping in sport, increasingly anti-doping organisations will need to have the capacity to undertake effective investigations and intelligence gathering activities. Also, the structure of the revised Article 5 highlights that the detection of doping breaches is best served through the operation of an integrated strategy that incorporates testing, intelligence gathering and investigations. It's been Australia's experience that evidence collected through an investigation can be used to better target a NODA's testing distribution plan, and that testing results can be used to shape the overall scope of an investigation. WADA is also looking to improve testing through measures promoting smarter test distribution planning, smarter menus for sample analysis and improved sample storage. I acknowledge WADA's push for greater proportionality. For example, the revision to the threshold for not providing athletes' whereabouts information before committing a violation is welcomed. While the Australian Government does not agree with some revisions, such as allowing a banned athlete in a team sport to return to team training prior to the end of their sanction, it is acknowledged that the overall benefits of the proposed revisions to the code far outweigh any issues we may have with some of the specific changes. Recent experiences in Australia have highlighted that doping is one of many threats to the integrity of sport. The potential for doping to be linked with other threats such as match fixing and illegal betting and linked to organised crime raises a number of complex challenges for both sports and governments. These threats are not unique to Australia. Stronger lines of communication between anti-doping organisations, law enforcement bodies, betting agencies and sporting organisations are essential to ensure that the full range of threats are understood and to develop effective strategies that protect the overall integrity of sport. I'd like to acknowledge those who contributed to this comprehensive review of the code and standards, including the management and staff of WADA, the members of the code drafting team and our anti-doping colleagues who made submissions during the consultation phases. Finally, it is appropriate, it's most appropriate to acknowledge the significant contributions of the Honourable John Fay, AC, as the President of WADA and that of Vice President Professor Arnie Lundqvist over the period of the last 6 years. Their influence and leadership has been outstanding over a period during which much of the tremendous progress of WADA has occurred. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd now like to invite the WADA Foundation board member for the Americas from the United States, Michael Gottlieb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the U.S. government, thank you to our South African hosts for your leadership, your hard work, and your hospitality, and congratulations for making this Fourth World Conference a reality and a success. Much has happened since we last gathered in Madrid in 2007. Collectively, in many regards, we have made remarkable progress in our efforts to combat doping in sport. First, stakeholders are working together more cooperatively and collaboratively than ever before. As a result, our efforts to detect doping are more sophisticated and far-reaching. In fact, many of the most impactful investigations have prominently involved national governments working in partnership with sport organizations. In the U.S. alone, high-profile examples exist of this emerging paradigm. While many are aware of the manner in which various sectors have come together on the enforcement side, there are equally important, if less well-known, strengthening partnerships advancing research, drug use prevention, and anti-doping education. Second, together we continue to make progress in detecting and anticipating the substances and methods employed by drug cheats and their entourages. Our ability to employ science and medicine as a tool to promote and protect the health of athletes continues to improve. Engaging private industry and public health regulatory bodies and law enforcement organizations in a consultative role is paying dividends. WADA's science department is to be congratulated for its innovative approach to what was not long ago regarded as an intractable problem. As a movement, we have also confronted and continue to face many challenges since Madrid. First, we can only pursue these important endeavors and continue to make progress if our stakeholders have the necessary resources to carry out their mission. We have endured unprecedented global economic challenges in recent years and hope the worst is behind us. The level of response these past 2 days has been heartening. However, we must make a concerted effort to advance the case to policymakers and the tax-paying public why investments in anti-doping initiatives are beneficial for our common good, civil society, and especially young people. I am pleased that our government has maintained funding to our national anti-doping organization and allocated public funds across the government to support and leverage research and prevention efforts, and we are proud to remain the single largest governmental financial supporter of WADA. Second, in order for sport to be worthy of its many virtues, it must be grounded on ethics and fair play. Holding athletes accountable for their conduct and decisions is, to be sure, essential. At the same time, all stakeholders must demand that same level of accountability among ourselves. Years after the World Anti-Doping Code has been adopted and the UNESCO Convention has been ratified, troubling issues still exist in assuring athletes, the sport community, and the public as to the state of compliance by certain sport federations, national governments, and anti-doping organizations. Moving forward, there must be increased transparency, consistency, and notice in clearly stating when, why, and where stakeholders are failing to meet their obligations under the code and/or treaty. Despite these challenges, we are optimistic about the days ahead. We applaud the consultative manner in which the revised code was developed and offer our support for its adoption in its current form. The role of WADA has been a topic of much debate, and the U.S. government's position remains consistent. This movement needs a strong and independent WADA, free to exercise its role as a coordinating, monitoring, and regulatory body. WADA should have the flexibility to provide a range of technical and policy support to stakeholders, and it should play an increased role in investigations. This is not an easy path to navigate, but we are heartened that the days ahead will be bright. We offer our thanks and admiration to outgoing President Fahey and Vice President Lundquist, and we offer our full support to the candidacies of Sir Craig Reedy and Reverend Stofili. They are the right leaders at the right time, and the U.S. government offers them our unwavering support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Our next contributor has only got off a plane to join us and to make this intervention, and I'd like to give that opportunity to the Minister from Japan, Minister Sakurada, who is also a member of the Asia Executive Committee representing Asia on the WADA board, and Minister in charge of sport, of course, in Japan. Thank you, Minister.
Well, first, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity for the intervention. First of all, at the opening of the holding of the World Conference on Doping in Sport, the World Conference, I would like to thank everyone who has been involved in organizing this committee. As a member of the WADA Executive Committee representing Asia, Japan has dedicated to a range of anti-doping measures up until today. And today, I would particularly like to highlight the anti-doping education projects that Japan has undertaken for the in the 2015 version of the code. It says that the fundamental rationale as a fundamental rationale, the spirit of sport is the search of the values at sport and the pursuit of human experience. This is a very important revision that puts great emphasis on educational and ethical values instilled in the anti-doping program. In Japan, the government and the Japan Anti-Doping Agency have collaborated in undertaking various efforts anti-doping education programs to athletes, coaches, and supporting personnel. And in particular, we have reached an increasing number of young athletes through outreach activity or other information sharing programs. And training the doping control officers has been continuously carried out for quite some time. We also believe that education and raising awareness for the younger generations is particularly essential for this. Because of this, starting this fiscal year, anti-doping education has become part of the compulsory curriculum in high schools, which means all high school students are receiving anti-doping education. We are also producing educational materials to be used in the education of high school students and young athletes. educating the younger generations is very important, and I hope that such approach would spread throughout the world, and we would be ready to assist you wherever it is. And Japan also takes initiatives in its sports pharmacist system. This national program certifies pharmacists who have been trained with the latest information and knowledge about anti-doping regulations during the required seminar. The aim of the sports pharmacist system is to further promote anti-doping education in order to ensure that the pharmacists have required expertise in advising athletes on the proper usage of medication and so forth in younger generations. Moreover, Japan has been working to promote anti-doping activities in the Asian region. For example, we invite anti-doping officials and doping control officers from the Asian countries to Japan. We share knowledge and the training. As I said previously, I would like to share with those of you who are here today from anywhere in the world who are engaged in the activities as we head towards the Tokyo 2020 Olympics and Paralympics Games. Japan has launched the Sport for Tomorrow program as a springboard for various international projects in the field of sport. The Sport for Tomorrow will develop the projects for promoting the Olympic movement and sporting values across many generations around the globe. In cooperation with WADA, it will also provide additional support for strengthening anti-doping activities throughout the world. In collaborating with WADA, the IOC, IFs, NADOs, and RADOs, Japan is more committed than ever to promoting anti-doping efforts in Japan, the Asian region, and around the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Minister. Next speaker, also from a representative of the on the WADA Foundation Board for Europe and the Flemish Minister of Sport, Minister Philippa Boyens.
Thank you. Dear President, dear hosts, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank South Africa's African hosts for the great hospitality and the excellent organization of this conference. I would also like to congratulate WADA for the impressive amount of work they have been put into preparing the draft new code and international standards for this conference. By the end of this week's discussions, I'm sure this will allow us to take another important step forward in the fight against doping. As Flemish Minister of Sport, I like to state that the fight against doping needs to be strict, but consumer-friendly. By this I mean that the athletes should be treated with respect and not suffer useless obligations and procedures. In this regard, I would like to express my satisfaction with the increased attention to the principles of proportionality. Proportionality, on the one hand, in the terms of which athletes to submit to whereabouts and the amount of whereabout obligations, and on the other hand, in terms of sanctions. The increased attention to make a difference between the real cheaters and negligent athletes will no doubt aid the support for our cause. I am particularly pleased with the latest fine-tuning and guidance regarding supplement cases. What I would also like to highlight is the mandatory publication of sanctions on the website. Although some European concerns may remain, the exclusion of minors and low-level athletes and the fact that public disclosure is only mandatory after the final appeal discussion is an important improvement. As regards to the regulatory role of WADA, I welcome WADA's new possibilities in the dispute resolution between international federations and national anti-doping organizations, and the extra emphasis on the concepts of smart test distribution planning and smart menus for sample analysis. This will no doubt lead to a more coordinated and harmonized approach, which is the way to go forward. Still, WADA's core responsibility is the monitoring of compliance with the World Anti-Doping Code. Therefore, I believe that a strong compliance reporting framework should be established, and the assessment of compliance should be conducted by independent experts without any conflict of interest. In this regard, I look forward to the Executive Committee's criteria in regard to the compliance of anti-doping programs, which I hope will be drafted in cooperation with the Council of Europe, which has useful expertise in this field. As always, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. As a member of the Foundation Board, I will fully support the worldwide implementation of this new code. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. On behalf of the WADA Foundation Board Member and Minister for State in Sport in Canada, the Honourable Bal Gosel, our next speaker is from the Ethics and Anti-Doping Unit of Sport Canada, Ole Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is indeed a great pleasure to bring warm greetings from Canada's Sport Minister, the Honourable Bal Gosel, and to table this intervention on his behalf. Canada would like to congratulate WADA on the comprehensive manner in which the revisions to the 2009 World Anti-Doping Code was conducted. The process was thorough and allowed for several opportunities for input and collaboration by all stakeholders. This has resulted in a significantly improved version of the code, which will provide an even stronger framework by which all stakeholders can work together. It is recognized that the code must keep pace with the increasingly complex doping practices. As such, there is a challenge for governments, the sport community, and national anti-doping organizations to effectively implement expanding code requirements and to achieve a full compliance. To meet this requirement, it is important to focus and to continue focus to be placed on enhancing mentoring and capacity building between and among governments, as well as regional and national anti-doping organizations. It is also important to use existing technical and financial resources in the most effective and efficient manner possible. Canada remains committed to the principles of the code, including the ongoing evolution and its implementation. We remain firmly committed to the worldwide effort to eliminate doping in sport and strongly support the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, and the UNESCO Convention Against Doping in Sport toward this objective. At the same time, we continue to support and work in partnership with our domestic agency, the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport, to ensure that our Canadian sport is practiced in an ethical and doping-free environment, both at home and on the world stage. Canada would like to formally thank South Africa for their tremendous generosity and friendly hospitality. They've done a marvelous job working in partnership with WADA in hosting this important 4th World Conference on Doping in Sport. In conclusion, I extend congratulations to President John Fay on his strong and effective leadership of WADA over the past 6 years. I wish Mr. Fay and his family much health and happiness for many years to come. Bal Gosel, Sport Minister of Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Ollie. And the final contribution from a board member, WADA Foundation board member, and also the Deputy Minister of the General Administration for Sport for China, and the President, the Deputy President of the National Olympic Committee, Minister Guan Shi.
Respect Mr. Jun Fahy, President of WADA. Respect Mr. Thomas Bach. Delegates, on behalf of the Chinese government, I would like to extend my gratitude and congratulations to Mr. Jun Fahy and WADA for your contribution and achievements in the world anti-doping work. I also thank South Africa for organizing this World Conference on Doping in Sport and your hospitality. The government of China honors the spirit of sport for honest, clean competition and cares highly the health of its sporting population. For a long time, our government has been attaching great importance to anti-doping work. I will give you a brief introduction on the achievements we have got. First, a better anti-doping legal system. The government of China aims to build a country under the rule of law, and sport in China is no exception. In 2004, the State Council enacted the anti-doping rules of China to better regulate the import, export, manufacturing, and dealing of prohibited substances. This year, the Sport Authority will soon approve a new version of anti-doping administrative regulations, which will further clarify the diverse responsibilities in anti-doping and specify regulations regarding doping control, sanction of anti-doping rule violations, as well as athletes' food and supplement management. In the meantime, the Chinese government will convert the new version of the World Anti-Doping Code into a national government policy and make it available to local sport authorities. This means a better anti-doping legal system with Chinese characteristics is in place. Number 2, active involvement in revision of World Anti-Doping Code. The Chinese government is committed to fulfilling its international duties and actively participate in anti-doping activities initiated by WADA and other international sporting organizations. During the code consultation process, the State General Administration of Sport of China organized a task force with officials and experts from the Chinese Olympic Committee, China Anti-Doping Agency, national sport organizations, and the legal department to study the revision of the code, and recommendations were welcomed by WADA. Third, achievements in anti-doping. The Chinese Sport Authority is committed to achieving prevention of doping by education. The Anti-Doping Qualification Access Control Program was enforced on Chinese athletes and their supporting personnel. The responsibility in relation to anti-doping for team managers, athletes, coaches, and related people at all levels of our camps were made clear. Financial support to doping control is further increased with improved testing and analysis. Anti-doping rule violation cases decline. Anti-doping work in China makes prudent progress. Number 4, a joint effort in anti-doping comprehensive administration. In 2007, a comprehensive administration and coordination group consisting of officials from 11 governmental departments was set up to address the problem of doping in sport. This coordination group has made achievements in regulating the illegal manufacturing, trafficking, dealing of prohibited substances. This year, a special team was set up to investigate the illegal online sales of performance-enhancing drugs or PEDs to better understand the situation in this area. The investigation results will be submitted to relevant departments, and subsequent actions will be taken to curb illegal online sales of PEDs. This is to create a clean external environment for sport. Finally, thank WADA again for your support and help to China anti-doping work. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is the Minister responsible for sport in Jamaica. I invite the Honourable Natalie Nita Headley to address you.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. It is indeed a privilege to be here today to celebrate the milestones we have achieved in the promotion of fair play. This forum provides excellent opportunity to review the progress made globally and to chart the course forward. The government and the people of Jamaica congratulate the Republic of South Africa for being such gracious hosts, and we acknowledge and commend the significant work by WADA. We also wish to express our appreciation for the recent visit of WADA to Jamaica. Jamaica was one of the first countries in Latin America and the Caribbean to ratify the International Convention Against Doping in Sport in October 2005. The Anti-Doping in Sport Act, enacted in Jamaica on July 31st, 2008, established the Jamaica Anti-Doping Commission, JADCO, as the agency responsible for regulating and controlling doping in sport. Jamaica has enjoyed a remarkably high level of success in sport, despite our small size and limited resources. Our achievements on the international stage in athletics dates back to 1948 at the London Olympic Games, when Jamaica won gold and silver in the 400 meters, and the same winner of the gold medal won silver in the 800 meters. We attribute this success in athletics to the well-established system of physical education and sport in our schools, Our internationally acclaimed National Boys and Girls Championships in track and field has been unearthing local talent since its inception in 1910. Many Jamaicans can recall a young Usain Bolt who dominated these championships in 2002 and who in 2003 was recognized by the IAAF and received the Rising Star Award for the 2003 season. When you have a great athletic tradition, it comes with a special focus and attention. Having institutionalized systems and practices for anti-doping, Jamaica, like many highly indebted developing states, are challenged to maintain an ongoing comprehensive education and testing program at a standard commensurate with our performance on the world stage. The government of Jamaica would like to place on record its appreciation of the efforts of the international sports federations, which have continued to conduct testing on Jamaican athletes. This augments the JADCA testing program and ensures that our athletes are comprehensively tested in and out of competition. For example, the IAAF has verified that during this period prior to the Olympics, Jamaican athletes were among the most tested of any other athletes in the world. Notwithstanding our financial difficulties, my government is committed and has sought to increase the annual budgetary allocation to the Anti-Doping Commission. Since 2009, the budgetary allocation has increased 100%. Despite these increases, there is still need for greater resources as we move towards strengthening our testing program. Jamaica calls for strengthening of the water programs as it relates to greater support for developing countries like Jamaica, in which there is great talent. We support the need for stronger education programs and a greater emphasis on the promotion of healthy lifestyle, fair play, and the full introduction of the anti-doping program in schools through the physical education and healthy lifestyle curricula at the secondary level. The stiffer penalties of up to 4 years for the first-time offenders will be more effective and meaningful once the support services are in place and a rigorous testing program is upheld. However, many state parties with less than optimal resources and anti-doping programs do not yet have comprehensive educational frameworks in place. Governments must ensure that athletes are first educated to understand how to live a healthy lifestyle free of dope and supplements, to protect their bodies and to embrace ethical principles. Jamaica looks forward to working with WADA in enforcing the new code by ensuring that the required reviews are conducted and the systems are maintained, appropriately funded, and effectively monitored. We also look forward to having stronger alliances within our regions and to WADA support to further develop the systems for our athletes in the interpretation of the lists of banned substances and unacceptable practices. Mr. President, I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I now invite the President of AFLD France, Professor Bruno de Bot. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, sir. As President of the French Agency to Fight Doping, I would like to make 3 series of comments. First of all, I would like to underscore the fundamental part played by WADA. If WADA did not exist, it would need to be invented. The French agency owes a great deal to the initiatives taken by WADA to provide for exchanges between stakeholders in doping control and for making available to all its know-how. Very recently, it introduced in France the athlete's biological passport. We cannot but approve the bulk of the provisions in the new code prepared by WADA. Second, I would like WADA to work ever harder to bring about greater transparency vis-à-vis itself, in order better to highlight the reasons for which certain decisions are taken. For example, changes in the detection threshold for cannabis. Transparency also in terms of stakeholders in the fight against doping. There should be more publicity surrounding the tests carried out during major sporting events, international sporting events, along the lines of what was done by the International Olympic Committee at the London Games. Third, while welcoming the considerable work done to draft a new code and new standards, I cannot but hide certain doubts. I cannot hide certain doubts on certain points. First of all, some legal issues. In terms of French law, I would like to refer to the availability of the athletes for tests at all times. Also, I'd like to underscore the fact that the code, and of course it could hardly be otherwise, does not cover the financing of the fight against doping. Also, I'd like to underscore the time required to promote proof of doping apart from traditional analytical results. But of course, I remain optimistic. With the new code, we can become more efficient and effective, provided, of course, we all show solidarity.
Merci, c'était très bien.
Thank you, Professor. Our next contributor is the Director of Grassroots Sport for the Department of Sport in Nigeria, Mr. Ahmed Alhassan Yamut.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Honorable Minister of Sports, Chairman, National Sports Commission of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I bring felicitation to the WADA and the code drafting team on the successful production of the 2015 draft World Anti-Doping Code. The document is a testament to WADA's transparent code consultation process and its efforts of both improving and providing acceptable uniform standards for all stakeholders in the fight against doping in sports within their respective jurisdictions. The Federal Republic of Nigeria, as a public authority cum stakeholder, gives its full endorsement to the 2015 draft World Anti-Doping Code and hereby reaffirms its commitment to support acceptable measures aimed at advancing and promoting clean sports in Nigeria and globally. In accordance with Article 22 of the 2015 draft code, Nigeria has expressed its commitment to the implementation of the code when it fulfilled the necessary criteria of signing the Copenhagen Declaration on Anti-Doping in Sport, ratifying the UNESCO Convention as far back as 2005. However, it is pertinent to invite the attention and consideration of WADA to challenges in legislative and bureaucratic processes faced by relevant code implementing agencies in developing countries like Nigeria. WADA must note that often these peculiar challenges largely contribute to the slow pace of code compliance among developing countries and may contribute to any inability of governments of developing countries to implement aspects of Article 22, particularly in achieving the target time of implementing Article 22.2. Be that as it may, Nigeria has so far acquired state-of-the-art equipment for the establishment of a full-fledged laboratory, and it's relocating the facility from the National Stadium to the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Research in order to expand its utilization and maximize as well. While the National Sports Commission of Nigeria acknowledges with appreciation WADA's assistance in the efforts to put in place necessary anti-doping infrastructure and ensure the implementation of a code-compliant national anti-doping program, we implore WADA to be a little bit more mindful of evolving political and democratic structures that create legislative and bureaucratic peculiarities, which make implementation of some mandatory provisions of the code by relevant agencies of government a little slower than expected. Meanwhile, together with our partners at the Nigeria National Olympic Committee, we are vigorously pursuing anti-doping and will, as soon as our legislative program allows, be in position to have our independent national anti-doping organization in place. But we have already established the agency. NADO is in practice already, is in place. At this juncture, it is very important to let WADA know that Nigeria will remain committed to the fight against anti-doping, because if cleanliness is godliness, then cleanliness is integrity, cleanliness is credibility, cleanliness is also a sincere moral responsibility. Therefore, the struggle is infinite, and we are committed to ride on this train with WADA. May I, at this juncture, express the sentiments, my African sentiments, to South Africa, the Republic of South Africa, for bringing this conference to a continent that hitherto produces only champions. Now we are also part of the train that will raise the standards of playing clean in sports business. Thank you, Mr. President, and God bless all of you.
Thank you. Our next contribution will be from the Senior Advisor in the Swedish Ministry of Culture, Thomas Johansson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I wish to, on behalf of the Swedish Ministry for Culture, say some few words. First of all, allow me to thank the organizing committee, the South African governments and WADA for having organized this excellent conference. Distinguished delegates, the Swedish national sport policy is built on 3 pillars. The first one being health, where sport contributes to lifelong commitment to physical activity through sport. Activities for children and youth shall, to be granted state support, follow the UN right of the Child Convention. The second pillar is the spirit of sport. We support the democratic sport movement, whom decide and implement their own sport rules in an open and transparent manner. By doing so, sport deserves its autonomy within the legal frame of society. The third pillar is elite sport. We support the right of the clean athlete to enhance her ability as far as she can and will within the rules of sport. These 3 pillars are important for us also in anti-doping. We therefore fully support that 2 out of 3 in the list criteria stands also in the new code. We also welcome the strengthening of minors' rights in the new code. The code clearly expressed the respect of human rights as a prerequisite in implementing the code. This is good, and it's important for all of us, for governments, for the sport organizations and other anti-doping organizations, also for the athletes, and not at least all of the citizens. The respect of human rights leads to proportionality. The rules in the code and international standards shall be decided in respect of individual rights and responsibilities, and not go further than necessary to meet the objective set up. This don't stop us from running an efficient anti-doping program. On the contrary, if we wish to work in a structural way and learn from regular governmental procedures, the efficiency and credibility of the international anti-doping work will increase further. The present draft of the World Anti-Doping Code meets these requirements, in my view. And this shows that WADA and the code review team has conducted its work efficiently, open and transparent. And that is probably why we have a code that most of us fully support. Government responsibilities is well described in the UNESCO Convention. And I wish to add that 52 nations from several continents also have ratified the International Convention Against Doping in Sport in the Council of Europe. The later convention has a strong monitoring system that enables true follow-up on state parties' commitments in the convention. I can only recommend to governments here today who not yet have acceded to this convention to carefully study this possibility. We should be aware of that when we formulated the UNESCO Convention, we had a broader target group, and therefore this convention, the UNESCO Convention, is more of a general one. Finally, I wish to, as many others, express our sincere thanks to the outgoing leadership of WADA. John Fay for 6 years of strong commitments, and Professor Arne Ljungqvist for his lifelong commitment to ethics in sport, and in particular in the fight against doping in sport. And we look forward to work together with the new incoming leadership of WADA. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Thomas. The next intervention will be made on behalf of the newly appointed Minister for Sport, Tourism and Equalities in the United Kingdom, Minister Helen Grant, and it will be delivered by Hitesh Patel, the Head of International Sport, Major Sports Events and Anti-Doping in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to my South African colleagues for their warm welcome to Johannesburg. Helen Grant, as you just said, was recently appointed as the Minister for Sport in the UK, and this is a short statement on her behalf. The United Kingdom government is encouraged by the final version of the proposed World Anti-Doping Code. This goes some way to address the challenges we face in the fight against doping in sport. The UK has long been committed to playing a full and active part in the global fight against doping, and we believe the revisions in the proposed code give us a clear mandate in punishing those that still believe doping is a risk worth taking. That is why the UK welcomes the strengthening of 4-year sanctions for such behaviour. We all know that athletes who dope rarely act alone, so we also welcome the fact that those found to be facilitating doping in sport will also be subject to similar sanctions. This sends a clear and unambiguous message. Since the last code was introduced, we have seen a greater shift towards the use of intelligence and information sharing. In the UK, we've seen the rewards that effective partnerships in this area can bring. We would therefore encourage others to fully embrace these methods, as they're becoming the strongest weapon in our fight against the sophisticated network of doping. I would like to take this opportunity to thank UK Anti-Doping for its work during the code review consultation process on behalf of the UK, as well as for UKAD's numerous achievements since being formed in 2009. Doping has no place in sport and must not be tolerated. The public must have confidence that the sport they see is true and fair. Tackling doping requires a strong partnership between government and sport, and we have that in the UK. I support these changes to the World Anti-Doping Code that will help step up the global fight against drug cheats, suppliers, traffickers, and anyone involved in doping. Thank you.